And can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It popped in there. Okay. We've got two more waiting to get in here. And we are good here. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of property taxes. We're talking about protests, valuations, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included in the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, as well as our presenting partners today, representing the Harris Central Appraisal District. We have Ms. Mabel Menifee, along with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and we have Ms. Shay Pinkowski, who will be facilitating and presenting the information for you all today, along with Ms. Sarah Hatch with the Central Appraisal District as well. But also included in the partnership, we also have Lone Star Legal Aid, Texas Legal Services Center, and the Earl Carl Institute, and the Houston Volunteer Lawyers. And collectively, we make up A Month of Service. And basically, what A Month of Service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis and offering a variety of different workshops, resources, information to the community relative to asset protection, asset building, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We collectively decided to come together several years ago in an effort to reach more people, to create a larger impact, and try to get as much information out to the communities as we possibly can. Considering we know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there, a lot of people don't know where to go for particular information, don't know where to go for available resources that are that they can access. So we wanted to see if we can, well, which we have, we wanted to again pool a lot of our efforts together and present information to you guys on a collective basis. So we've had to transition from in person to the virtual platform, and this has actually been beneficial to all of us as it has allowed us the opportunity to reach not only the people in throughout the city of Houston, but also surrounding counties and across the state, and even in some instances in other parts of the country where people are tuning in, watching us live as well. So do know that the information that does get presented through all of our workshops are relative to the entire state of Texas and not just for the city of Houston or for Harris County. And each of the representing organizations are kind of going into a little bit more detail about all the other services that they offer and what they do and what's available to them. Do know that the information that does get presented here today is also for educational purposes only. None of it is to be considered legal advice. However, if you do find yourselves in need of any civil legal assistance, we do encourage you to reach out to our legal service partner organizations for any civil legal assistance. This particular platform and presentation for today is specifically about property taxes and protests, since the valuation notices are going to be going out soon, various exemptions, and because the property tax bills for this year have gone out, payment options. If you find yourself, kind of falling behind a little bit on paying your property taxes, what your options are and what's available to you. So if you do have questions, we do ask that you try to keep your questions to be general in nature and not get into too much personal detail information, as we are recording the session as well as broadcasting live on our social media platforms. So we don't want any of your personal detail information kind of getting out there for everybody to have access to. However, there is someone monitoring the chat. You can also type your question into a chat if you have a question. You can wait until the end of the presentation and unmute yourself and ask your questions directly. But know that your question will get addressed to the base of our ability on the platform that we're on. Sometimes they'll tell you that they'll send them messages directly or what have you, or contact them directly if your particular question gets a little too specific for what we're able to answer for you in this live session. So do keep that in mind. So again, for all of the participants that are joining us on Zoom, you do have the opportunity to type it into the chat and unmute yourself. If you are following or watching us on our social media channels, then do type your question or your comment into the comment section, and we'll make sure that your question is read aloud at the end. And I do know that some questions were emailed to me prior to or when some of you registered. So I will be going over those questions at the end as well too. So with that being said, a lot of information is going to be covered here today, and we hope that you all get the information that you came here to receive today. If we don't, if there are any classes or any workshops that we currently do not offer that you all may be interested in, at the end of the presentation, there's going to be a link for our survey. So we're asked that you complete the survey. We want to hear back from you. We want to receive your input to know that if you got the information that you needed here today. In addition to, if there's some other information that's pertinent to what's going on to you as an individual or to what's going on in your community, then let us know. So as we're planning future presentations, then we'll know what issues of importance that we need to get out there and get some information for you guys as well. So do keep that in mind too. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on into introductions and get into the meat of our presentation. So Ms. Shay, why don't we have you introduce first, and then Ms. Mabel, since you guys go first, we'll have you then introduce afterwards.
All right, sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay Pinkowski. I'm here. I'm the interim manager for customer service, and I'm here to assist with questions you might have in reference to your property taxes, how they're billed, how they're received, and payment plan options that you might have available to you that you might not be aware of. So I'm super excited to get started and present to you guys today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or send it into the chat, and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. Ms. Babel.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name again is Mabel Menifee, and I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District. And it's that time of year when one of HCAD's chief functions is something that everyone will, if you're a homeowner, you know all about, and that is the annual valuation notice that goes out this time of year, in which case HCAD provides you with its estimate of your property's market value, which is then part of the process used to determine your property taxes. This time of year too is also one of my favorite times because I get to bring out the experts, the folks who actually do that work each year, and so that they can provide you with specific answers usually, and if not, we can certainly get an answer for you. So I'm going to start off by just also mentioning that this workshop, as we like to call these, are part of our spring property tax protest workshops. We're going to be doing several of those virtually here on the AMOS platform, and they're also going to be at least probably about 10 or 11 more of those that we will be doing across the county at various locations. And that information is going to be posted very soon within the next couple of days on our website. So if you find these to be helpful and you want to pass that information along, or if you just want to revisit, you can go out there on our website and check the schedule and either register for one here through AMOS or attend one. So having said that, we're going to start off with Sarah Hatch, who is one of the senior members of our residential property division, to go over some of the process and protest options for you today. And then we're going to also talk about exemptions and how they play into helping reduce your property taxes. And then after that, Shay Pinkowski is going to come on and talk to you from the Tax Assessor Collector's Office, which represents the payment and collection side of the property tax process. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Sarah Hatch, in our residential property division. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Let me get my screen share up here.
And while she's doing that, again, just as a reminder, feel free to type your question into the chat. In addition to that, for if anyone has to leave early or anything like that, know that we will be recording the session and sending out an email link to everyone so that they can go back and watch the presentation at a later time and or share it with someone else that also finds the information to be beneficial. We see your complete full screen that says slide presentation. Go to swap view or trying to zoom in here to see what you got here. Not sure why we see your entire presentation. Okay, yep, there you go.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so as Ms. Mabel mentioned, my name is Sarah Hatch. I work in the residential property division at HCAD. So we're just going to talk a little bit today about residential property taxes for this coming year. So property taxes support critical local services in our county. Texas has no state income tax, and so our property taxes are a large part of how we fund different important services such as schools, streets, and roads, our police and fire and other first responder type services, and things of that nature. So our property tax laws originate with the Texas State Legislature, and they're overseen by the Texas Comptroller. So the Central Appraisal District has a few different responsibilities. So our values are to appraise all county property, residential, commercial, agricultural, industrial, and business personal property. And our responsibility is to value that at 100% of market value as of January 1st of each year. Our other responsibilities include administering exemptions on properties where those are applicable and certifying the appraisal rolls. So that allows the different jurisdictions that tax that property to set the appropriate rates. So we have a few important dates in the tax calendar, in the property tax calendar. January 1st is the date of appraisal. This is the date as of which your property is valued. So your value is based on whatever its condition was on January 1st of the year. May 15th is the protest deadline. Protests must be filed by this date for any value change to occur before values are provided to the jurisdictions and the tax bills are calculated. So your protest deadline is May 15th or 30 days from the date of notice, whichever comes later. So if you receive your notice on April 30th, then your protest deadline would be May 30th or 30 days out from April 30th. So October, November is about when the tax bills are mailed out. So after we've gone through the process of protesting the property values and certifying those, then once we hand over those certified tax rolls to the taxing jurisdictions, then the tax bills are mailed out in around October, November. And February 1st is the delinquency date. So the following year, so we're setting values right now for tax year 2025. And February 1st of 2026 is the date at which those will become delinquent if they're not paid. So we're required, again, by the tax code to be at 100% of market value. This means that based on what the market is doing in your area, based on what homes are selling for, we're to match 100% of that value for your appraisal. So the oversight aspect of this is that the state, the Texas Comptroller conducts biennial market value study of all appraisal districts to ensure that we're compliant. That means every 2 years, they're taking a look at what homes are selling for and how we're appraising them in comparison to make sure that we are meeting 100% of market value or as close to it as possible. So this is conducted by the, our appraisals are conducted by the process of mass appraisal. That means we're not looking at every single home and making an individual decision. We're valuing properties in mass based on sales in the area. So again, that value is derived based on sales. And we're responsible for 1.9 million parcels. That's a lot of property, and we're serving over 500 taxing jurisdictions just in Harris County. So here's an example of what your appraisal value notice is going to look like when you receive it in the mail or electronically. This is the format of that, and so you see Up on the top right, that's highlighted, that's your iFile number. That's a file number unique to your property that you can use to access information on our website. You can file your protest there using that number. And that's where you'll find that, is on the upper right portion of that value notice. Up on the upper left, you'll see your property description that lists where your property is, or the legal description, and then the property location. And then further down the page, you'll find what your appraised value and your market value are. So that market value is the one where we have to be at 100% of what the sales in the area are indicating. And then the appraised value takes any exemptions into account that are on your property. And there we go. So again, on your notice, you will see the appraised value. This is the number used in calculating the tax bills. So it might be the same as the market value, or it may be lower because of the 10% cap if you have a homestead exemption, or I believe now it's a 20% cap for non-homestead exempt properties. So these values may be different, the appraised value versus the market value, or they may be the same. So the market value, again, is the value at which a property would sell for to a willing buyer on the open market. So our primary role is to establish an annual market value, and the protests are based on that market value. So you may have a different appraised value, but when you come in to protest the value of your property, what we're looking at is the market value and what it would sell for based on the sales in the area. So there's a few different things that go into determining your property value. There are approximately 7,000 neighborhoods in Harris County. And so we're typically looking at neighborhoods in mass, and sometimes a little bit beyond an individual neighborhood. We're also looking at the condition of your property to the best of the knowledge that we have. We're looking at recent purchases or comparable sales. If your home recently sold within the last year, then that's going to be the best indication of what your home would do on the market, is what it actually did. And if your home hasn't sold in the last year, then we're looking at other homes that did, that are as similar to yours as we have available. We also look at different amenities, and we make adjustments for that. And all of that goes into determining your home's market value. But again, you are the expert. Nobody knows your home as well as you do. And we can only take into account the condition of your property with information that we have. So if we haven't gotten any information about condition issues with your property, then we don't know to take them into account. You're the expert on that. You're our best source of information on the condition of your home. So there's a few different methods and types of protests that you can do on your property. The old school method is the paper form. You can mail in a paper form for your protest, or you can submit it electronically. Online, we have the iFile system, which is where you'll use that iFile number to access and submit your protest. We also have the iSettle program, which you can opt into in lieu of coming into the office for an informal hearing. You can opt into iSettle, and we will try to settle with you electronically via email. You can come in for an informal hearing, which can be either virtual or in person, where you will meet with one-on-one with an HCAD personnel, usually an appraiser. If we're not able to come to an agreement at that hearing on what is an appropriate value for your property, then the next step is you can go to a formal hearing with the appraisal review board. That can also be either virtual or in person. And you now, as of a couple of years ago, have the option for that to be before a panel of 3 ARB members or one single ARB member. There are additional methods beyond that that include arbitration, but typically we try to settle things before they get to that point. But you do have additional options beyond the ARB hearing as well. So some things to expect after you file a protest. You'll get a notification of your hearing date, unless you chose iSettle, in which case you'll receive an email if we're able to make an offer via email. So notification of your hearing date to come in and meet with us. You should expect to receive a copy of our evidence at least 14 days prior to your hearing. And what that may look like is you may receive an email that says it is available, and you can go to the same iFile portal where you submitted your protest to access that evidence. So that is available to you at least 14 days prior to your hearing. The evidence packet contains a lot of information about your property itself. It has sales in your immediate neighborhood. It has sales in surrounding neighborhoods, including land sales if there are any. There are interactive maps putting nearby sales into perspective, and additional points of important property data. And there should be also, if you have received the notice of your hearing date, there should be a portion on there that lets you know how to access that evidence. So because of state confidentiality laws, all of this information is only available to you after you file a protest. We can't give you a copy of our evidence for you to make a decision whether you want to file a protest. You'll need to file a protest, and then you have access to this information. And excuse me just a moment, I have to plug my computer in.
Again, we know that a few of you just stepped in, so please feel free to type whatever questions that you may have into the chat, or wait until the end and you can unmute yourself and ask questions directly of the presenter. Do keep in mind that we are recording and broadcasting live on our social media platforms, so keep your questions to be general in nature if you can. Okay. Sarah, go right ahead.
All right, thanks for bearing with me there just a moment. All right, so some information about particularly the formal hearings with the Appraisal Review Board, and some helpful hints for that. The time is limited in those hearings. We get a lot of protests every year. We have to be able to deal with everybody in a timely fashion. And so we do try to limit those hearings to about 15 minutes. So please come prepared for those hearings. Make sure that your evidence that you're bringing in to show to the district and to the ARB is organized in about the same order as you want to go through your presentation. Make sure that you bring enough copies. You'll want a copy for yourself, a copy for the appraiser, and a copy for any panel members if you're meeting in person. So if you're meeting with a 3-member panel, have 5 copies of everything so that we can all be following along at the same time. And with that, we have some information on exemptions. Ms. Mabel, did you want me to go ahead and go through this, or do we have?
If you'd like to, I'm more than happy, or I'll go through them.
Okay.
Julia is in the chat to answer any questions regarding exemptions as well.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go through it.
Okay, perfect.
So a little bit of information about exemptions. What are they? How can they save me money? How do I get them? Exemptions are administered by Harris Central Appraisal District. And what it does is it exempts a portion of your property's value from taxation, and that applies to your primary residence only. This is used by the taxing authorities in calculating your property tax bill. So like I said, exemptions exclude part of your property from taxation, or part of your value from taxation. It reduces the appraised value before tax rates are applied. The most common residential exemptions are the general residence homestead. That just means this is your primary homestead property. This is where you live. This is your primary residence. There's also an over 65 exemption for those over 65 years of age or at 65 years of age. There's an over 55 surviving spouse exemption, and there are disability exemptions, disabled veterans exemptions, and other service-related exemptions as well. So the general residence homestead exemption, like I said, you own and occupy the home as your primary residence. There is some documentation required for that. We need to see proof of ownership and typically a driver's license that has that address as your primary address. This provides a 10% appraisal cap increase cap, as well as a $100,000 school tax exemption by state law. Other exemptions may be offered by various jurisdictions. There's the city, the county, other special districts like mud districts or things of that nature, depending on where you live. The immediate residence homestead exemption. You qualify for the immediate residence homestead exemption upon occupying a home, such as a new home that's been built that you moved into partway through the year, or homes where the previous owner had no exemption on the property and you moved in partway through the year. You must apply before the first anniversary of the date the property was acquired. So if you buy a home on April 15th this year, and you want to have the immediate residence homestead exemption, you need to make sure you file it before April 15th of next year. If the previous owner did not have exemptions or the home was never occupied, the exemption will be granted as follows. That first year that you occupy the property, you'll get a prorated exemption. So you buy it on April 15th and you move in, you'll have your exemption starting April 15th through the remainder of the year. And then the second year, you'll receive the full exemption, which you'll have for the entire year, and that establishes the cap eligibility base year. That's the year that your 10% increase cap will begin. If the home was previously owned and receiving exemptions, then the previous owner's exemptions will remain for the remainder of the applicable tax year. You won't need to do the immediate homestead exemption because the previous owners will cover that year, and then yours will start the following year. The over 65 and disability exemption. The over 65 exemptions, you qualify for the entire year that you turn 65. So if you're turning 65 anytime this year, you can go ahead and file and you qualify for this entire year. The disability exemption, you qualify for the entire year that you become eligible to receive disability benefits under the Federal Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance. And this does require a physician's statement to verify. The benefits for either of these exemptions includes a school tax ceiling or freeze. So that's for the school district portion, which is the largest portion of your tax bill. That creates a ceiling on the value for your property. The exemptions granted to homeowners with general residence homestead are a part of this as well. You're eligible for tax deferral and to pay taxes in installments without penalties. And other exemptions may be granted in individual jurisdictions as well, just like the homestead. The over 55 surviving spouse exemption, you qualify for this if your deceased spouse died in a year in which they qualified for the over 65 or disability exemption. Excuse me. So if your spouse qualified for the over 65 exemption and has deceased and you are the surviving spouse and you are at least 55 years of age, then you qualify for this exemption. And you receive all the same benefits as the over 65 exemption. The school tax ceiling continues and is transferable, and you're eligible for tax deferral and to pay in installments without penalties. Miss Mabel, I'm going to actually let you talk about airship exemption because I think you probably are a little bit more well-versed on it than I am.
Sure. So the airship exemption actually is one that allows an individual, I think we had a question about this earlier, will allow someone living in that home who may not be 100%, may not have 100% ownership because it's heir property. Say they have 3 other siblings, so theoretically they only have 20% ownership. In the past, that may have disqualified them from receiving a full 100% exemption, even though they may have been living in the home, taking care of the property, and the siblings who or other heirs may actually be off living in their own properties, enjoying 100% exemption because it was totally in their name. So this allows that person who is at least one heir living in the property to receive 100% exemption, 100% of the exemption. There are a couple of extra steps that they need to go through in order to get approved for this process. But when you're filling out the exemption application, that's going to come up in section 3 of that homestead exemption application, where it's going to ask the question, is the property for which the application submitted an heir property? And if you answer yes, that's going to trigger a couple of additional questions. But again, this is really important for a lot of folks who live in homes where they are not the sole owner. The property was left, say, by their parents to all of the kids, and there may just be one living in there. So if you have any questions about this, your instructions, as I said, are on that page. But if you have any questions about it, do call HCAD, ask for our exemptions department, because they will be more than happy to walk you through the eligibility steps to receive this exemption. Shall I give it back to you now, Sarah?
Okay.
Oh,
All right, so how to apply for exemptions. You can mail in a paper form. You can also apply online. We have a mobile app or email, and all of those are methods that you can apply for your exemptions. Depending on when these are submitted, the processing time may take longer. It's important to submit everything at once to avoid delay in processing. If you submit your homestead exemption, and that's all you submit, and you don't send us also a copy of your driver's license with the address on there, or other supporting documentation, then we will have to reach back out to you and ask you for those, and you'll have to send them back in, and it'll just make the process take a lot longer. So if you can send in everything up front, that gets it processed faster.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Once it's been applied to your account, you will be notified, and there is a how-to video available on our website at www.hcad.org under forms, and then under popular forms. And
if I can, for a quick minute, talk just to add a little something on what you see down in the left-hand corner, the annual exemption confirmation card, something that HCAD has been sending out for a number of years. There is some confusion brought about by a new law that states that appraisal districts have to audit and verify whether a person continues to be eligible for their homestead exemption every 5 years. And this has sort of been translated for a lot of people who think they have to reapply for their homestead exemption every 5 years. That is not the case with HCAD. That could be the case. We're not sure how other appraisal districts may be interpreting this new law, but HCAD, because we send out that confirmation card each and every year, that's our way of checking up on whether that individual, that household, is still eligible for the exemptions that are on their account. It does say on the card, these are the exemptions that we have going forward. If not, you are required by law to notify HCAD that you are no longer eligible for those exemptions. If the person has moved from the house, this card is not forwarded, or if for whatever reason the post office doesn't get it into the mailbox of that individual, they're not forwarded. So if the card comes back to HCAD, we will make an attempt to reach that individual. And if we're unable to do so, then that exemption could roll off. So basically, just, this is the card you kind of look for in December or early January to just say, hey, your exemptions are still in place. It also serves as a reminder for people who may not, where there's been a change of ownership, that, hey, they may not be eligible for the exemptions that are on that home. So back to you, Sarah. Anything else if you would like to hit? There you go.
Okay. All right, so as of November 2023, they passed what they call the circuit breaker. This is a 3-year pilot project. This applies to properties that do not have the homestead exemption, that are valued at or below $5 million. The appraised value for the current year cannot exceed 20% of the appraised value for the preceding year. So this is applied in a similar way to the 10% increase cap for a homestead property, but this is for non-homesteaded properties, and the increase cap is 20%. This excludes homestead and agricultural properties, which have their own deal. And in order to qualify for this, this is information from 2024, but for 2025, for this to apply, you must have owned the property as of January 1st of 2024. Is that right, Ms. Mabel? For the circuit breaker to apply for 2025, it must have been owned as of January 1st of 24.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and so that is automatically applied, that 20% cap.
Mhm.
Okay. This is what our website looks like. This is www.hcad.org. And you see up on the top there a few different headers on that banner up top: property search, about, careers, etc. That's where you'll find the section for forms, where you can see the exemption forms and other important forms. You see maps up there. You can use the property search to find your property and information about it. And then there are further resources down below there as well, including a lot of how-to videos about the hearings process and about filing for exemptions, etc. And that is, this is our contact information. We are located at 13013 Northwest Freeway in Houston. Our general phone number is 713-957-7800. And you can find further information to contact us on our website, as well as if you have questions via email, you can reach out at help@hcad.org. And with that, Miss Mabel, you have anything to add before we close it out?
I do not. I think we'll be taking some additional questions at the end, but for now, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Pentowski of the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office to talk a little bit more about the sort of flip side of the property tax process. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, not sure what happened, Shay, but now we can't hear you.
Oop, can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Fantastic. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate the introduction. My name is Shay. I'm here with the Office of Annette Ramirez with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and I'm going to be going through my presentation here for property taxes and how they're calculated, along with build and plus some information on payment arrangements and options that you might have that you might not be aware of. So. So just a brief introduction. We did elect a new tax assessor collector last year, and she just started her first term this year in January. We have some information up there if you'd like to read up a little bit further about her and all of her experience, because she does have a lot of good experience in collections, and we're grateful to have her. Our office does collect for over 75 jurisdictions in the county of Harris that are all condensed into one bill that we then provide to the jurisdictions that provide us with these needed public services. She's also the head of vehicle registrations and title transfers, so she's the property tax assessor and registrar for those as well, and of course for voter registration whenever you register to vote. Just as an overview, our office does maintain approximately 1.7 million tax accounts for the County of Harris and all of its interceding properties. We disperse more than 80 taxing jurisdictions their funds, including your Harris County bills, the City of Houston ISD, along with City of Houston itself, Harris County Flood Control, and many, many others. So we calculate your bill using the information provided to us by the appraisal district. So starting with the value that we have from the Harris Central Appraisal District of the appraised value of your property, we then subtract it by any exemptions that are applicable to the account, and then we multiply it by the tax rates which are provided to us by our jurisdictions and what they determine to be their rates to be, and that's how we end up with a calculation for your tax bill. So we start with the appraisal value, we subtract any exemptions applicable, and then we multiply that by the rate, which is determined early on in the year, or later on in the year rather. there have been quite a few recent property tax law changes in reference to how much you are allowed for an exemption on your taxes, including your over 65 and your over 65 on homesteaded properties exemption has increased from $275,000 to $320,000 for Harris County. For City of Houston, we've also had an increase for those over 65 and disabled homestead properties from $160,000 to $260,000. And then as Ms. Mabel and Ms. Sarah mentioned earlier, that general homestead exemption went up from $25,000 to $100,000. So you see that a lot for all of your schools, which would be your ISD taxes. You saw a pretty good reduction in that as well if you have that homestead. And then along with the proration, which is the ability to start that homestead applying to your account prior to your full first year of living on that property. You can begin that from the date in which you move in now. Just as what I've mentioned before, as far as the highlights of what the differences for those exemptions have become from, $40,000 to $100,000 for your school ISD exemptions for just having a homestead, along with having new limits placed on increases for your property taxes. So it reduces how much your property appraised value can, well, of how much the taxable value of your property can increase by. And then there was something called a compression, which restructured what we call tax freezes or tax ceilings, which limits how much you would pay for your property taxes on schools due to being that over 65 or disabled veterans homestead. There's a limitation on to how much you would pay and how much it would increase past. So I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. But that also went through some restructuring to allow for larger reductions to your taxes. We have a visual just of your tax bill. This is what you would be expecting from us closer to October, end of October, mid-November of this year for 2025 taxes. So that's when those will be going out. But at the bottom, as you see here, there is an option to remove that bottom portion of the bill and send that in with your check. If you send it in by mail, if you come into one of our branch offices, all that we need for your bill to be processed is all on this page. So we'll have your account number along with your account information so that we're able to bill you properly and correctly. And this is something that you can bring in just for your own reference as well. And that way you can keep the top portion of your bill for reference. For your homestead exemptions and over 65 exemptions, we always recommend that if you are eligible to have those exemptions, that you go through with the process of applying for them, because while it doesn't sound like it would save you a lot because of how the process works, it does make a pretty grand difference when it comes to actually seeing your bill and how much it will be. So just for an example, on a property that's worth $320,000, you would have a bill of $7,153 without any exemptions. And then with the homestead, that gets reduced by about almost $1,800, which reduces it to about $5,323. And then with your homestead and over 65 exemptions, that reduces it even greater still by about $4,826 to having a tax bill from $7,153 to $2,327. It's a pretty drastic difference. So we always recommend that if you are eligible for these exemptions, that you go through the process and apply for them in order to make things easier for yourself as a taxpayer. So always recommend that you go through with that process. I mentioned tax ceilings earlier, and tax ceilings are taxing limitations that we place on property taxes for schools, meaning that once you turn over the age of 65, you are disabled or are a disabled veteran, you have something called a tax freeze, tax ceiling, tax limitation placed on that property, and that reduces how much of your property taxes can be paid for that property tax year. So you would not pay more than that tax freeze, you would only pay less. So if your bill results in a lower tax bill, then you would pay less than what that freeze is. But if it's over, you would not pay more than what your tax ceiling amount is. So that's where that comes in handy and is very helpful for a lot of folks out there. We offer different forms of payment arrangements for accounts. It is a financial planning tool, and it can be paid off early, but most importantly, it helps avoid collection efforts and foreclosure actions on properties that you may have not been able to pay in full at the due date of January 31st. So we're able to begin payment plans as soon as February 1st, so long as your bill was released timely, and so long as you do so prior to the attorney beginning collection on the account, you would not pay attorney's fees, which helps a lot of folks out. Because that attorney's fees do increase a good bit of, I believe it's 20%, not including the penalty and interest. So it's 20% of the total amount plus the penalty and interest that you would normally have to pay. We have something called a tax deferral, which is applicable and something that you can apply for through the Harris Central Appraisal District. And that deferral is a postponement of property taxes, meaning the bill is still due. The amounts that you would normally have to pay for your property taxes are still due. However, you have more time in which to do them when you are that over 65 disabled homeowner, disabled veteran. This is applicable for your homesteaded properties, and as opposed to paying the usual rates for penalty and interest, you would only pay a 5% interest per year on unpaid balances. Meaning if you continue to make your payments as usual, you continue to make your bills due whenever they are due at the end of January, you're more than welcome to do so. You're not required to wait. You're not required to not pay your taxes, but it does allow you that freedom of, should something happen or you forget or you're on vacation or out of town, whenever the tax bill comes out and it slips your mind, you have that protection that you're not going to be billed on usual penalty and interest fees when you have that deferral placed onto the account. So we highly recommend it for over 65 and disabled homeowners for the simple state of considering it as if it were insurance. It doesn't remove your taxes, you still owe them, but it does allow you with additional time should the need arise for you to need additional time to pay your taxes. But that is something that is applicable through the Harris Central Appraisal District. And just a note that we have on here, if you are currently paying off on your home, if you have a mortgage company, if you are making a refinance a mortgage, they may not allow you to do so because of the fact that at that point, your property is of an interest of theirs. So we are not able to, if they decide that because it is their interest, they may require you to make those payments anyway, regardless of whether you have the deferral or not. So that's why we have that note on there to be aware of. As for other properties that have only the homestead, or they have only, or they don't have any form of payment arrangements, or they don't have any form of exemption on the account, such as business personal property, things like that, we do offer payment arrangements for you. For homesteaded properties, we are able to offer an extended payment arrangement from anywhere from 12 to 36 months with a 1% interest per month plus the initial penalty of the month in which you create that payment plan. So in February, that would be the 7% and then 1% each month after. This is applicable to current and previous tax years. So if it got away from you last year and it's gotten away from you this year and you'd like to create a payment arrangement, we can add them both to the same payment arrangement. And for this year, if you've had payment arrangements with us previously, so if you had a payment arrangement for 2023 taxes and you're still not finished with paying those, but you'd like to have a payment arrangement for 24, this is the last year in which we'll be able to do so. In order to have everyone caught up for 2025, we're allowing this last year as kind of a buffer in order for you to be able to complete with your payment arrangements and have that ready, in addition to preparing yourself for next year's property taxes, which will be due at the end of January 2026. Um, for other property types that are not homesteaded, so this would be your rental homes, this would be business personal property, this would be land that does not have a home on it that you are paying just the land on. This is, we have the option of a 12-month payment arrangement for you where you can contact us and we'll set you up with a 12-month payment arrangement. It accrues the usual penalty and interest as it would had it not been on the payment arrangement. However, what this does avoid is that additional attorney's fees that you would have come July had you not completed with that payment arrangement. So it does save you money in the long run, although you do still continue to pay as if you were seeing penalty and interest as normal. For our over 65 homeowners, for disabled homeowners and for disabled veterans, if you have that homestead, the over 65 and the homestead or rather the homestead or the disabled homeowner or homestead and disabled veteran, you're able to apply for something called a quarterly payment plan, which would split your total tax payment into 4 equal payments, and you would be given additional time in which to pay those 4 payments. So with your first quarter of that payment being due at the end of January, your second being due at the end of March, the third being due at the end of May, and then the fourth being due at the end of July. So that is an option for over 65 disabled and disabled veterans homeowners on their homesteaded properties. We do allow you to have the opportunity to split that into 4 equal payments, which does tend to help a lot with folks who have a set income that are not able to do so. In one full payment, this does tend to help a lot as well. Your account must be approved before we're able to go through with having the exemption or with having the quarterly payment plan applied to the account. But if your account has that homestead and over 65 or homestead and disabled, we're able to go ahead and put that quarterly plan placed onto your account. So you can just contact us and request for that quarterly plan, and we'll be able to tell you over the phone, or if you come into one of our branch offices, we'll be able to tell you whether or not you apply for that. We have multiple different options for paying. So if you'd like to make your payment for property taxes, you can do so in person, you can do so online, by mail, or by phone. We do have an automated system on our phone which you can contact and insert your contact info or your payment information, and they'll be able to make your payment to your accounts on there, along with the traditional method of coming into a branch office and making your payments in person, sending your payments as a check in the mail, or by going online and making your payments on our website. So just a word of acknowledgement, if you are making your payments with a credit card or a debit card, there is an additional 2.45% fee that you would pay to the banks due to using a card. And that is something that we don't collect for. We collect the payment for the banks here, but we're not the entity that receives the funds for those fees. So but that is an option that you have. If you'd like to still make your payments online, but we're planning on paying online, you have the option of paying with something called an e-check, an electronic check, which allows you to make your payments still with your banking and routing information, but it helps you avoid that 2.45% fee. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's the information to be able to do so. We are here to help. If you have any questions, if you're you're in a situation that you aren't sure what your next steps would be, or if you need assistance with anything, please feel free to reach out to us, contact us, so that we can assist you with any queries that you might have. I'm here for questions as well. I don't see anything in the chat at this moment, but if anyone has any questions or would like to get some clarification on something that I said today, please feel free to go through and do that for us.
Okay, there's a couple of questions that are in here, but I know that there were a few that I had that were emailed to me as well. Someone did ask, and I like to read the questions that are in the chat because sometimes people, one, they're not paying attention to the chat, and so also those folks that are watching online, they can't see the chat, so they may have some of the same questions that someone actually asked. So if I file for an airship exemption, can I also file for an over 65 in the same year?
So, am I on? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think Alicia answered that, but Yeah, if you meet the qualifications for the over 65, you can apply. You know, if you're if you're applying for the over 65, that comes along with the general resident. So the over 65 and the air property exemption, they're two different kinds of exemptions, but once you have that general resident homestead, sure, you can.
Now, is the general homestead exemption and the over 65 exemption, are those two that you can apply for at the same time, or is it one or the other?
No, they are, you can apply for them. You can have the general resident homestead exemption, and then as soon as you turn over 65, you get the benefit of the over 65
Okay,
added on to your general resident homestead exemption. So
gotcha.
if you haven't had a general resident homestead exemption and you say you move into a new home, you're not from here or whatever, and you apply for the over 65, those are gonna come along with the general resident homestead. That's gonna come along with the general resident homestead exemption. So it's kind of important for folks to remember, hey, you got the general resident homestead exemption. As soon as you turn 65, you're gonna want to apply for the over 65 so you can get those additional benefits on top of what you already had with your general resident homestead.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that was that one. Okay, so let me go back to the emails. Um, someone wants clarification. Is it necessary to apply for the homestead and the over 65 every year?
No. Alicia or Frida, I know you both are out there, so feel free to jump in if you need to add anything, but no, it's not, once you, once you have those exemptions, once you've been applied and they've been approved and they've been applied to your account, you will have those exemptions until, the property changes hands. So that's why it's very important to remember, that if you're moving into a home, those exemptions that may have been on that home are not yours. You need to apply for your own, and that's really important when you're moving into an air property or once the ownership changes on a property.
Now, how does that impact couples when it comes to ownership of a home when you've got one spouse that's not 65 and another one that is? Does that make a difference?
That over 55 surviving spouse was one example of where if the couple is obviously if they're married and one spouse, they were able to obtain that over 65 exemption because one of the spouses had reached age 65. Then say that spouse passes away, that surviving spouse is able to continue that exemption.
For the over 65.
For the over 65, correct.
I'd like to add to that. This is Alicia with
Go ahead, Alicia.
HCAT. If the surviving spouse is 55, they can continue that exemption. But if they're not, they won't be able to. They'll have to wait until they turn 65.
Uh,
They have
And
to
that
55 if the over 65 spouse passes away.
And just
Okay.
for point of clarification too, Alicia, what happens when, not because of the death, if the spouse is over 55, and they divorce, what happens in the case of a divorce?
In the case of a divorce, the over 55 owner, of course, that's not their exemption. That exemption belongs to the over 65 person, so they can take that with them.
Okay, all right. So okay.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Wow.
And another thing for our over 65 property owners, if the over 65 property owners' names are not listed as spouses or husband and wife on their deed, it can get really kind of tricky with these exemptions. They won't be, they will both have to apply for the exemption because it's just like they're almost like they're roommates because the deed does not say husband and wife. The deed says Mary and John.
And the same thing applies for like if it's like a parent and a child that own a property together. So they don't get the full exemption for the entire value of the property. It's only half
Their portion of it.
portion.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I've had that. I had that question repeatedly from other people. So I wanted to make sure that I actually touched on that. So, because there was someone that mother and child, who the mother and the child bought a house together, and they thought that they would be able to get the entire exemption because the mom was over 65, but in fact she can only get half of the exemption for only half of the value of the property and not the entire thing
Well,
because they weren't
what
married.
happened? Yeah, what happened with that? Mom and the daughter or son would receive the homestead exemption, but mom would only be able to receive her portion of the over 65.
65. Okay. All righty. Let's see, another question here. So you've already gone over the tax ceiling. Um, Question here. Why are property taxes charged by multiple organizations in Harris County? Why is a total number not provided to the homeowners? I get bills coming randomly from all different offices.
Texas. Uh, so you each, depending on where you live in Harris County, for instance, there are multiple taxing jurisdictions. So you will pay for your city taxes. You're going to pay for county taxes. If you live in a municipal utility district that taxes, you may pay a MUD tax.
Separate school.
And then of course, whatever school district you live in, you're going to pay those. It's just how tax jurisdictions and the property tax system is set up in Texas. And it's kind of important and can be particularly confusing when you're dealing with, as this person has said, all these multiple bills. Because if you live in Harris County, chances are you're going to get the bill from Harris County is going to be for the county. And if they collect for that particular, the bill from the tax assessor collector's office, Shay's office, if they collect for that particular jurisdictions, but they don't collect for all of them. So you may be getting individual tax bills. It's just, you're gonna just have to kind of go out there and check and see what your jurisdictions are and sort of know the process. Personal example is I pay 3 because I live in a MUD district that I pay a separate tax. The MUD district bills me. I live in a separate municipality that or city. I don't live in Houston, but another municipality, and I get a city bill from them, and then of course the Harris County taxes. So I feel your pain, but that's just how it's set up in Texas.
Now, what happens when your taxes are escrowed and you've got all these multiple jurisdictions? So the mortgage company should be the one receiving the bill for all of those jurisdictions?
Yes.
Okay. I say that also to say that if that is the case, that people need to kind of pay attention and watch their tax bills or make sure that their mortgage company is actually making their tax payments in a timely manner. Because then
that also, but
go ahead.
Go ahead, Shay.
Shay?
Okay, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I heard Ms. Mabel starting to talk too. So I was just going to add on to that. Whenever mortgage companies do pay your taxes for your property taxes, a lot of times the way that they categorize what taxes they're paying towards looks a bit different than what you would anticipate. You would think that they would split it based off of the tax assessor collector that they're paying money towards, when in reality what they'll split it into is they'll split it into county taxes, school taxes, and then I think they call it like miscellaneous or special taxes. And those special taxes will be for things like, your utility districts, like your MUDs or your not anything that is not the first two will be lopped in together with that last one. So like your PIDs, your MUDs, your Harris County or the HC Utilities District and things like those will be classified as something different. So you'll see different number amounts on there, but if you add up all of those categories that your mortgage company supplies you with, along with comparing them to what your bills are, it should equal to the same amount. So I'm just putting that out there because I've seen it a lot of times where folks will call me and like I don't understand why my mortgage company is charging me for this this special tax or this miscellaneous taxes, and I don't know what it's paying towards. But that's what it ends up being. It's just that they classify it as something completely separate whenever they're actually putting it into their systems. So just heads up. But it is always super important to make sure that you're checking to make sure that your bill is being paid. Because whether your tax bill is paid by a mortgage company, whether it's paid by a titling company, your taxes are your responsibility as the property owner. And in the end, it's your name that is on your property tax statement, and you are the one responsible for your bill.
That it's paid and then being applied correctly. Because they can pay it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to your bill. So make sure that it's actually applied correctly. You go in, you check your account, and get a copy of your receipt that shows, yes, it was paid to my account. Because you don't want bills coming into you say that you now have a late fee that's been added because it didn't get paid correctly.
Indeed. And, that is something you can check on our website too, at least for the Harris County taxes. All of our receipts are available for the last 5 years. They're all available online, as well as, being able to print a copy of a paid tax statement showing a zero balance due for 24. So long as the taxes have been paid, you can print that for your own records as well.
There's a question here in the chat. What if I deed to my son, but I retain a life estate? I'm assuming this is about the exemptions. How does that go?
And it looks like Bill was the person who typed the question.
Yes.
As long as he's as long as his son is listed as a beneficiary, Bill can keep his exemptions until he passes away.
Only as a beneficiary, but not completely taking the deed and put it in completely into his son's name.
Well, it looks like he's saying the deed is in his son's name, but I took it as he lives in the property. So Bill can actually keep the exemption for his life, and then the property is then deeded over to the son after he passes away. But the deed has to be listed that way.
Okay.
There are several different attorneys in several different places that write these deeds up, and sometimes those deeds are not as clear as the property owner may want it to sound.
Okay. All right, so that answers that question. Let me go back to my email here. Hold on. Is the future of filing exemptions in the future going to be changing? Have you guys heard anything about any kind of changes to file for exemptions?
What's the reason? I mean, what?
I don't know. That's all the question is. Is filing exemptions in the future changing?
That could be related to that whole 5-year audit thing, and that I explained earlier that we are not going to be requesting at this point. HCAT will not be requesting people to refile for the exemptions. That's kind of what's out there in the stratosphere that may be happening because of this new law change. But because we send out that confirmation card annually, we are already checking up on your exemptions. So there's no need to refile unless we take it off because the confirmation card came back.
Okay. Let's see, will the associated forms be made available? Okay, so I will include, when I send out the link of the recording to go back and watch this, there will be other links and resources that are going to be available on your email, including the link to the exemptions forms or the page where you get all these forms on the HCAD website will be included as well. The actual form itself, no, it's just the page where you can go to download a copy of the form. Let me see here. I'm interested in knowing more about how the value is assessed for my home and what exemptions I might be eligible for. And what are the best practices to protest increased property taxes? For example, if my home has not been updated since 1981 and it is often compared to others that have been updated. So what information should be provided for that kind of a protest?
Might let Sarah might want to tackle that one. Sarah, you want?
Sure. So so in the specific example that was given of a home that has not been updated since 1981 and often is compared to those that are, you know, we're valuing based on the sales in the area that have occurred. And you know, ideally that will give us a good range sample of things that have been updated, have not been updated, have been totally redone, and we'll be able to compare all of those things. But sometimes what we find is that most of the sales or all of the sales that occurred in that neighborhood in a given year were properties that had some level of updating. So if that's the data that we're working with, we do our best to make adjustments and account for that. If you feel that we are that we've listed your property as if it's been updated and that's not correct, then by all means, please bring in photos and information and evidence to show us the condition of your home and that it is not updated. You know, to be able to give us a comparison of what your home looks like versus the updated homes that have been used as comparison. But sometimes, you know, sometimes we do only have updated sales in the neighborhood for that given year, and we make the adjustments the best that we can. But again, if that's the biggest difference, then definitely bringing in information to show us the disparity there is very helpful.
And actually estimates help as well, correct, Sarah? If you want.
Yes, if there are repairs, specifically repairs that are needed on your property, then estimates for those repairs are very helpful as well, because you know, I can look at photos of your home and see that maybe there's some cracking in the sheetrock or things of that nature, and that there's some work to be done there. But an estimate helps me to know what the extent of it is and helps kind of put a rough number on, you know, how that may be impacting your value.
Does the same thing apply when you've got a lot of those older communities or those communities where you've got older homes and then you've got these big 3-story whatevers that kind of get built right next door to you? What does somebody do when you've got those kind of things that are building around you and then it's increasing your property tax value?
Sure. I mean, that's a similar situation where we hope that there are still some of those older homes in the area that are selling that give us an indication of what those sales look like. Because if we're finding that those are selling and still selling with value in those older homes, and that they're then being remodeled or that they're then being, you know, kept in that condition, and that tells us one thing, versus if they are being sold mostly for the value of their land so that they can be torn down and a new building put up, then that tells us another story, and we value those differently. So that's what, you know, again, ideally that's what we would have, but we don't control what sells or when. So sometimes we do have, you know, a year where all of what sells is the, you know, those new 3-story townhomes being built, or all of what sells is the properties that have been totally remodeled. But we do our best to find the information of properties that sold that are non-remodeled, that tell us what a home that's never been redone is selling for in that area.
Was it recommended that everybody protest every year regardless?
I mean, yeah, if you feel that the value is not what you think it should be, then absolutely. Excuse me. It's I mean that's your prerogative. We have the process. The process is available every year. And you know, one thing that I often say, we made a point to put it in the slides, that you know, we can't give you the all of the evidence that goes in our evidence packets unless you file a protest. You know, you always have the option to go ahead and file and review that evidence, and then if what you see is that our value is appropriate, if there were 10 other homes just like yours that sold for the value that we put on your home, and you decide it's not worth your time to come in and do the process, you can always withdraw your protest or just not show up. So it's a good idea to file so that you can review that evidence.
What if I buy my house in 2024, say for $250,000, and then the following year you've got, or later in the year, you've got all these other homes that have now sold for 300,000. Can I protest that the value of my house at that time was 250,000, or am I going to now tax at the 300,000 that everybody else's house is being sold for?
That is a great question. That can get tricky. So if we're valuing as of January 1st, right? We're setting 2025 values as of January 1st. So the closer that homes sell to that date, the better they give us an indication of what the values are on that date. So if you bought your house back in April of 2024, that's a good indication. But if since April of 2024, 10 other homes exactly like that have sold, and we see those prices increase over the year up to that 300, then that kind of tells us that the market has trended in that direction, and that's where it is as of January 1st. However, the best indication of your exact home on the market is what your exact home did on the market. So I would say still come in, bring that information, bring the information of your purchase, and make that case.
Because at that point, that, and especially if you file the homestead exemption, that's where your appraisal cap starts
That's right.
at.
That's right.
So
yeah,
it can't
the year you buy a home is always a good year to come in and make the best case you can, try to get it set as low as you can, because that's where those increased caps are starting. That's right.
Now, I've been seeing a lot of these folks now that when after COVID, when people were having these bidding wars for all of these different properties, and they were paying in excess of what a lot of the houses were valued at. And now they're trying to sell them or resell them back on the market, and they're not getting nearly what they actually paid for the houses, 3-4 years ago. Is that a good reason to now protest what your value should be versus what you actually paid for it?
So from my personal experience with what I've looked at, I haven't seen a major downturn in the market, but it has definitely flattened a lot. Or there may be like a slight dip. But I would say, there were a lot of things back right around like 2021 where people were ending up paying well over asking prices. But I'm not sure that was everybody. Some of those are kind of outliers, right? And so if so for example, if you got into one of those bidding wars and ended up paying $350 for a house in 2021 that we appraised at 300 in 2021, and now we've kind of stayed around that 300 or maybe slightly above, then that kind of indicates that, like, it was overpaid in 2021 and we're still kind of down here. And And so we may still be below what that purchase price was. But I mean, look, you know your house the best, you know your situation the best, bring in whatever information you think helps your case and make your case. I personally, I don't think that there's been a huge downturn in the market to where you could just come in and say, you know, things have gone down since I bought my home in 2021. We might need something a little bit more specific and localized than that. But again, whatever info you have, especially, you know, you're right. There's been people who try to turn around and resell those homes, and they end up having to sell them for exactly what they bought them for, or maybe even a little bit less. Those are all just kind of a case by case thing, unfortunately.
There was another question that was sent, and I want to just acknowledge that this is the question, but I don't want to touch on this subject. Civil citations regarding HOA dues, determining the breakdown of legal charges and which is more financially benefit to pay or to fight it. Okay, so that question in regards to HOA, we will not get into that discussion considering that we're talking about the property taxes. However, there is an HOA and foreclosure prevention presentation that we do that's actually scheduled for next month on the fourth Thursday, would be April the 24th, where we talk about HOA dues and the fees, and how to prevent foreclosure, what they can legally come after you for, and so on and so forth. So definitely want to tune in to get that particular question addressed. But I just wanted you to know that since this is not the platform for that particular subject, that we won't be covering that question today. But I will definitely make sure that I save that for next month's conversation.
Okay.
I want to make sure I got everybody else's question here. Trying to watch email, watch the chat, and social media all at the same time here. So make sure I'm getting everybody, because I don't want anybody to walk away and their question has not been addressed yet. So I do believe that's all the questions that we do have here. Are there any other questions from any of the participants that we have that are joining us today? You know, I did want to ask about yep, Shay is still here. Payment options. So for people, payment options, or to get into a payment plan, you don't have to be over a certain age in order to do that, correct?
Not for a payment plan. So payment plans are our installment agreements, and those are those payment agreements that you can get into. If it's a non-homestead, it's 12 months. If it is a homestead and you live in that property, it's anywhere from 12 to 36. Normally we split it up by year, so 12, 24, 36 months are the options that we have. But those, you don't even have to have any exemptions on the property. It could just be like a plot of land that's next door to yours that isn't combined to yours, or say if you have the land but you're going to build later and it's just in your possession, it's your ownership, you pay taxes on it, that's also applicable for those payment agreements. But you don't have to be over a certain age to do that.
Okay. Just want to make sure people are aware of that. And then to reiterate again, the difference between exemptions versus deferrals, that they don't have to pay back. They don't have to pay back an exemption. Deferrals do have to be repaid.
Right. So deferrals, those taxes are still owed. Exemptions, the value, or however much that exemption is removed from the value, so it gets removed from the taxable value. So exemptions are like a discount to your property taxes. Deferrals are a postponement. Okay. So still owed, just not immediately, not owed.
I know a lot of seniors sometimes get, you know, I don't have to pay any taxes. Well, yeah, they don't want to.
Yeah, they don't want to leave it to their heirs and say, well, I have to pay these taxes. I don't want to get a reduction on my taxes because then someone else is going to have to come in afterwards to pay it. But you know, that's not the case. If you have the exemptions on there, it just reduces how much you pay. If you have the deferral on it, you're still able to pay your taxes. You're still able to make those payments. It gives you the liberty of paying it over a longer period of time, as opposed to needing to pay it all immediately at the end of January every year. Just gives you an additional time frame in which to do so.
For deferred property tax bills, when are they due? If they've been
Deferred
deferred.
property tax bill, so technically they're due, but they will not become delinquent. So those taxes are due, same as all taxes are due at the end of January. But instead of receiving penalty and interest fees, you would only receive an interest fee of up to 5% per year. So those taxes are still due at the same time that all other taxes are due. But what it does is it allows you to have it at that reduced additional fee in order to pay that total amount off quicker, or over time rather. But the deferral, once it's removed from the property, whether that property gets sold or the person who lived in that property is no longer living in there, at that point, then once that deferral comes off of the account, we have to send notification that the deferral is being removed. And then once that deferral has been removed from the account, they have 181 days to make those payments of all the taxes due that have not been paid yet with that deferred rate. So that 5% interest. And then they have those 181 days to pay with that value. After that, the taxes are going to be assessed as if they were not deferred, as if they had the full penalty and interest fees from whenever those penalty and interest fees would have started accruing originally. So then you have to pay with usual non-deferred penalty and interest fees.
So if my mother has had a deferral on her property taxes for the last 5-10 years, she suddenly passes away. I have 180 days to pay 10 years worth of deferred property taxes.
Right, correct. But if she's deferred, that means she had the homestead and the over 65. And if she had it for the last 5 years, that's 5% per year, as opposed to, 7% in February, 9% in March on just the first year, and continuing to accrue by 1% every month after. So it really is a pretty big difference whenever you get down to brass tacks. Is the amount that changes is pretty drastic. So we always recommend, if you are, if you already are making your plans for what happens whenever you decide to no longer own this property, making plans with whoever you're selling the property to, or if you're making your plans for, after you pass, and you're making your plans for your heirs, to make sure that they're aware, hey, these are my taxes. This is the bill that comes to me every month. They're deferred, and this is how much it is. But deferred taxes, if they're deferred, you're still going to see an amount due on that bill. You'll still receive a bill every year. You'll still have all of the access available to you whenever you log on to our website to see how much you owe on taxes. All of that will still be on there. With exemptions, if you owe zero, it's because you owe zero due to exemptions. It's not because of the deferral.
Okay. Ms. Alicia just put in the chat that the exemption belongs to the person, the tax belongs to the property. So regardless of what happens to the person, the tax is still on the property, and it's still due. They are still owed. Yes. Okay. Alrighty. I just wanted to make sure that we reiterated that. So that's why it's also important to have the conversation with a lot of your loved ones, especially those seniors that don't want people in their business, that they don't want people to know that they've, kind of fallen behind, or, have fallen on hard times, and they're having to choose between medications versus paying their taxes for that particular year. Have the conversation so that and that your heirs are not kind of caught off guard with, oh, wow, mom hadn't paid taxes in the last 3 years, so we now got to get these taxes paid before the house goes into foreclosure. So, and you don't want to find yourselves in that kind of a situation either, where nobody knows. So have the conversation, even if it's just kind of in passing, without infringing on their privacy, because, parents can be very proud. Grandparents can be very proud and don't want anybody to know. So you still, need to kind of sneak it in there however you can, to at least have the conversation so somebody knows. But alrighty, I don't see any other questions that we have in the chat here. or online. And I believe I have addressed all the other emails that were sent. I will be sending out a link along with the available resources, the contact information for each of the presenting partners, organizations and their websites for you guys to ask additional questions if you do have something related to your particular circumstance. Then you'll be able to reach out to them and those various departments with those to get those questions addressed. If again, if there are any other presentations that we don't currently offer that you all may be interested in, then please feel free to reach out to us and let us know, put in that information on the survey. If you found the information to be beneficial and it was impactful for you, and you'd like to share your story with us, then let us know that too. You have the opportunity to include that information on the survey as well. So again, we hope the information that was presented has been beneficial to all of you. We do ask that you pay it forward and share it with other people that may also find the information to be beneficial. If there are other questions that you may have for next month, or if you want more details, want to talk to somebody about your protest for next month or whatever, another question that you have, feel free to come back and join us next month. We are here for this presentation the 4th Wednesday of each month, except for the month of May. And we just clarified that May will be our May 14th due to the property protest deadline for May. So we're going to move that date up in May. But otherwise, we are here for this presentation the 4th Wednesday of each month. And I will be sending out a copy of the calendar for the month of April, along with the presentation, the link of the recording of this presentation, so that you guys can go back and watch it and then register for future classes as well. So with that being said, I believe that is it. And we will return the remainder of your time to all of you guys. So Shay, to Sarah, to Miss Mabel, and thank you, Miss Bryan, for answering those questions in the chat as well. And to all of our participants who joined us this afternoon. If this is your first time coming, thank you for registering and signing up for this month of service presentation. If you are returning, thank you for your continued support. And we hope to see you all again very soon. Take care of yourselves and stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.